For this week's video, I'm back in Gloucestershire and I'm riding at the Canop Cycle Centre in the Forest of Dean. Today I've put some fresh new tyres on the e-bike and I'm taking it for an electrifying blast on the Verderers trail, which went a little something like this.
That was so good.
So I'm riding the Hammerhead e-bike today and I'll explain why I chose this particular bike a bit later on. But for now, we're out of the car park and heading along the fire road to the start of the trail. So the Verderers is an 11.3 kilometre long blue graded trail. It's a classic trail that's recently had a few extra tweaks. It has a couple of taxing climbs, but one of the best blue descents in the country, in my opinion. So let's get to it. Turning onto the single track, the first section is great for feeling out your bike and getting used to the trail. After a mini uphill, you start flowing gently down. Being a blue trail, every feature on here is rollable. And this section in particular has a few small rollers and some flowing berms. Today it's quite a warm and dry one, so the trail surface was a bit loose and gravelly, as you'd expect. Another reason why I'm really glad I switched to a new set of tyres this morning. They definitely help with the grip, especially around the sweeping corners of this first section. So the Verderers trail is an extremely popular route. As well as flow and features, this trail takes you all over the forest, so if you're able to take your eyes off the trail at any point, it's worth taking in your surroundings. As I mentioned earlier, the trail has a really long and exciting descent towards the end. Unfortunately, this means that there's a big climb at the beginning of the trail. Now, I've slogged up this climb on various other bikes many times in the past, so today I'm really grateful that I'm on my e-bike. This made short work of the climbs, and dare I say it, it made them kind of fun too. It's worth noting that this is a very popular trail used by riders on all different types of bikes, so if you are on an e-bike, you should be respectful of slower riders in front of you who may not be going at your pace. Now, as I mentioned, I've ridden this trail a good few times in the past, so I know at the top of the hill the trail goes forward down an awesome descent. Or so I thought. In actual fact, the trail has now changed. The blue now heads down on a shorter descent to the right, whereas I accidentally keep going straight forward down what is now being called the Red Trail descent. This is a descent that was redone a few years back and it's a huge improvement. It flows really nicely, it has a couple of rollable jumps and it has these large berms to help you carry your speed. I really like this downhill section. If you can take it at a decent speed, it's an interesting twisty line and there's nothing to catch you out. You just sit back and enjoy the ride. Even though this is a fast and interesting section of descent, this doesn't even hold a candle to the trails that come later on. But it does give you an idea of how these trails ride and the kind of features they like to put on descents. Even though I took a wrong turn down the red, at the end of the descent it brings you directly out in front of the blue trail again as it carries on over the fire road. With a few small rollers and plenty more winding corners, you maintain your flow nicely. This is just the kind of challenge you'd expect from a blue graded trail. For a rider like me who's generally more gravity oriented, I sometimes don't see eye to eye with blue graded trails. And that's why I'm riding the Hammerhead, my hardtail e-bike. Sometimes riding my big bike on trails like this can get a bit boring, when you've got lots of suspension and a lot of flat pedally sections. Riding a hardtail means that the sweeping descents become more enjoyable, and being on an e-bike means that the flatter sections, which are usually relatively boring, are a little more exciting. It goes to show that there are definitely horses for courses. But does this e-bike make trails too easy?
So even though I'm on the e-bike, I'm still putting a fair bit of effort in. I'm actually breathing a lot harder than I thought I would. All good for fitness.
Well, there you have it. With my pedal assist set to maximum and only a couple of small stops, I pootled my way along the Verderers trail in just over half an hour. I remember it being a lot longer than that when I was riding my manual bike. So depending on traffic, your fitness and bike choice, it could be somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour. At the top of the hill, I really got the chance to open the bike up and see what it can do whizzing along the flat trail between the trees. After this top section, the trail starts to point downhill ever so slightly. You have this short section where it's filled with twists and berms. It isn't the longest downhill, not by far, but it's a short taste of what's to come. At first, these descents are nothing special. They're a chance to rest your legs a bit after the big climb, but you will find yourself putting in a few extra pedal strokes just to get the most out of the gradient. And then you eventually get to the part of the trail that really points in the right direction. From this point, you're pretty much heading downhill the whole time, and it's a long time. Split into 3 or 4 sections, things get more and more exciting the further down the trail you go. The top sections are relatively mellow with a few berms and bumps, and the lower sections are full on berms, multiple fast rollers, and fast flowing roller coaster trails. Undoubtedly the best part of the whole Verderers. One of the things I love about this trail is the mix of fitness, downhill and adventure. This is a long spread out trail and you really feel like you're in the outdoors when you're riding it. You get the enjoyment of nature while making the most of the fun and well maintained trails. The Canop Cycle Centre are well known for creating and looking after a great set of challenging routes, from trail rides like this to the downhill trails and skills area. Looking around while I was riding, you can see that they're working on new trail sections and alternative features all over the place. Woo! Whether it's creating more jumps on the red trail, reshaping the downhill trails or resurfacing the blue, there's so much work going on here. It seems like the whole place is getting a proper facelift. It's amazing to see their dedication to mountain biking, and it puts a lot of other trail centres to shame. And I can't wait to see what it all looks like when it's done. So coming to the end of the second downhill section, things are looking good. But it's this next section where the fun really begins. So here we go. This is a good 5 minutes plus of pure enjoyment, and it's chock full of turns and features. I mean, take a look for yourself. I don't use words like rootin' tootin' lightly, but I assure you that this descent is not only the rootinest piece of blue graded trail around, but it's also the tootinest. Oh. This trail really has everything that you'd want from a blue trail descent. It's a long route jam-packed full of interesting features. I mean, if you're not bobbling over rollers or diving around a bank corner, you're getting air over an optional kicker or blasting down a winding section of single track. And yes, this trail is fast. You can get some serious speed in places on this trail if you want to. The combination of speed and features means that it's not only good for beginners or riders looking to progress on this type of terrain, but it's also enjoyable for more advanced riders too. Everything on here is rollable, but you can certainly get your bike in the air on many of these features if you want to. As you come down towards the end of this section, the trail splits off with a red line option to the right, but this time I managed to stay on the blue trail to the left. This is where the trail starts getting really windy. The roller coaster ride continues as you flow through the trees. Now, I show a lot of trails and locations on this channel, but the Canop Cycle Centre is somewhere that all mountain bikers need to visit. With red and blue trails, a skills area and a huge variety of downhill trails, from beginners to expert jump trails, there's enough to keep you entertained for ages. There's also a pre-bookable uplift for the downhill trails if you don't fancy the push-up track. There's of course a cafe with decent coffee, and the parking is actually pretty reasonable too. Considering what it gives you access to, it's worth paying the full day and riding for as long as you can. Continuing on down the trail, once you're over the fire road, you're pretty much at the bottom of the descent, which means that you're pretty much at the end of the trail. This is one of those trails where the effort of riding uphill is definitely worth it for the downhill. And it won't matter what type of bike you're on. Hardtail, e-bike, full suspension, you can have a great time on this descent no matter what. So that is a great trail and it's well worth a visit. If there wasn't so much else here to do, you'd want to ride it again. If you like watching this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to the channel. It's free after all. So thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.